we'll keep it 300%. Alright, let's see here. Hooded Raven. This is the one I was trying to work on. Do I not have... This doesn't quite fit, but it was fun to write. Let's see about this one. For now, I'm gonna keep it. I need to refiddle. Keep that big size. Okay, let's see here. So I got some really interesting feedback on this first chapter here, and I love this first chapter. My goal is to get her, and you guys can see this first chapter in my stream links. There's a link to a Google Doc that has this first chapter in it. But the feedback I got was really good. It makes me want to sort of refocus this next chapter. Essentially, I'm trying to get to the shitstorm as fast as I can. And I'm trying to figure out exactly how fast I want to get to the shitstorm. And I don't think parts of this are necessary. This is good. She hasn't been isolated for ever. She's been on a base. I have this tag to get read by somebody who actually understands what it's like to come home. So this is supposed to be highlighting the trouble of coming back to what is essentially O'Hare after being, or not O'Hare, I think it might be O'Hare or LAX or something. For somebody who's been in an active combat zone. And has kind of been riding on passenger liners and stuff for the last couple weeks. And then getting thrown headfirst into the chaos that is something like LAX. And the fact that this society, being military or having mandatory service, is structured in a way that doesn't ignore the fact that soldiers come home with PTSD and come home with baggage. And most people past a certain age, or at least most of the Drakers, the Immortals, past a certain age, have seen some form of war. Open. It's not winding. It's not expansive. I'll have to work on that. This is supposed to be the equivalent of wool gathering. I did a really good job weaving in elements of the world here, and I don't want to cut it at all. Not that the feedback I got was to cut it, but it was very much to the feedback I got. People really liked just some of the more mundane elements of the world. You know, the idea, if you read the linked Google Drive, of thought control. Basically, their cell phones are little beings that go here and connect with magic, and are essentially full implants that are all thought controlled and stuff. But just mundanity like that mixed, or that being mundane and mixed with like just her texting a friend. But here, I forgot about this, that I worked. When we cut to the tunnel. Oh, that's why this is acting all funny. So that's why this looks so crazy. Oh, jeez. I am not used to Scrivener. Formatting. No, that didn't work. Control-C. I just want to add. I want to make it double spaced. How do I make it double? Scrivener double spaced. Go to edit. Oh, I'm an idiot. Yes. That looks cleaner. Less messy. Hello, Commander Root. So the feedback was the mix of mundane and normal. I love this bit of her texting her friends. And then down here. Let's fix that typo. Temperancy is a word, I'm pretty sure. And if it's not, it's now. I can't believe I missed those sections of this today. Okay. I need to really describe the city, which is not easy. In any way or form. Mostly because I'm not a particularly visual person. And And so getting my head around how the city should look is really hard. But the Gregory. It's not an implant. It is an interface. Oh, that's a really interesting question, me. Huh. Is social media an inevitable symptom of consumer mass communication? There's no way to case study that here. Our history suggests yes. Oh, jeez. How do you describe a city? If from the air, it's a mad dream of a forest with pillars of greenery, steel, and glass rising into the sky in impossible shapes. Small sprouts and shrubs of other buildings. From the ground, Iridath. Never the same? Constantly evolving? Always shifting? See, what I'm going for is not the clean white and steel with greenery belts of our utopias, or of our modern utopias, or the grungy, dirty cyberpunk futures. I'm going for something a lot more naturalistic and also just maddening in its design, because they haven't had to overly obey the laws of physics. And form is a function of, or is a part of function. I'm trying to figure out, what do you describe a city that is 60% parks and trees growing everywhere? In places, and in other places it's not. How do you describe that? View from above. Erratic. Erratic? How do you spell erratic? Oh, double R. First of all, that needs to be added. That needs to be added. That needs to be added. What are my species right now? Imperium client species. The Carnarvon are Imperium. The Palawami are also Imperium. The Helinwa are Imperium. What is my architectural history? Because I'm one of those people. Cultures. The Linwas need an architecture. Their buildings are often and tall. Interconnecting walkways. Compose of multiple cylinders. With platforms and bulbs for space, as well as in cylinders. Polynos have also been subsumed into their dominant Australian culture as well. So in the DRU, one of the things I want to note is oh, let me put this on the stream while I think. So in Iridethka, Shidenzukuri. I actually have a name for it. That is beautiful. Urban greenways and subtle enchantments, natural woods and flowing aesthetics, but are more and more fused with modern tech. So Irideth is not impossibly shaped. That is the DRU's thing. If I had to guess, I'd say the Imperium has a higher density of Helinwas. definitely has the highest density of Carnarvon. The Vezion are too young to have affected culture. So the key is they favor impossible geometry. But they like the courtyards and external gardens. And DRU stuff is all about communality. Okay. In the 10th age, it's kind of just a hyper acceleration. They don't have interfaces. The interface has been around 1,000 years. Everybody has interfaces. But DRU favors holographic or interface. Whereas Sudath became Spires? I don't care about the DRU. It's in the wrong place. Fourth, fifth, and seventh age styles are noted as kind of global culture stuff. So everybody has a little bit of those, and those are fifth age is all fancy, gilt and like ornate shit. Sixth age is all kind of, it's a softer form of that. Seventh is a lot more naturalistic. And then eighth is where you get a split. Oh! Holy cow, I forgot I did that. That's huge. So how does that affect these styles? So fifth age is pointy. Sixth age is where you get circular. No, seventh age is where you get arcs. Okay. So this is the shift. Circular slash curved. Texture. And is one of the major shifts that lives on. Fifth age is all about rigid lines. I forgot they called walls arcs. And that most rooms have a few pillars or other demarcations along the walls to section it off. Has that come up at all in my writing? Not here, but definitely when I'm describing the city. Where do I describe the city? Irashian Imperium. Oh, I do actually focus on things are concentric in the city. I do mention it. What do I call it down here? 80-mile radii. It's 90 square miles. God, I hate having to do math for my writing. 90 square miles to circle radii. So if the area of a circle is 90, a circle is 90. What is the radius? I knew there was a calculator. It's 5.3 miles. Or 5.35 miles. It's not very large. 10-mile exclusion zone? 9-mile exclusion zone. No. If you're in the middle, that's an 18-mile exclusion zone. But if you center it, yeah. Okay, well... area of a circle, calculator, thank you. 9. It's 250 square miles. What does 4.5 miles look like? What a weird question. What's my... 80-mile radii. Holy crap, hold on. Can I get that in a number? 7.5 times 10 to the 5th? .24 times 10 to the 5th is 724,000 square miles. 1,000 square miles to hectares. An ungodly number of hectares. Thousand, hundreds thousand, 463,360,000 acres. That's not... What is a 4 million acre? What is something that is 4 million acres? Here's a million acres. A million acres is the size of Rhode Island. Or 1 1/10 the times the size of Rhode Island. It's 4/5 as big as the Grand Canyon National Park. Which, if you look at on a map, is a minuscule part of the continent, really, but an immense area for that to be the old city. I like the measureofthings.com. Or, sorry, the measure of things from the Blue Bulb projects. That's incredibly useful. It's a tenth the size. It's 7/10 as big as Prince Edward Island. Is Prince Edward Island... Where's Prince Edward Island? Prince Edward Island. Well, okay. So, point A, from there to there. That's a 3-hour drive. $252 kilometers. So it's the 7/10, so it's 70% the size of this. That's still too big. So we're gonna highlight diameter. If we go to 80 miles in diameter instead, oh. Ha! I typed in 480. That's why it was that big. Okay. 20,000 square miles. 20,000 square miles. Which gives me 12,867,961 acres. That's the size, a little bit small. That's the 90% of Lake Michigan. That's an ungodly amount of territory. It's 4/5 the size of West Virginia. So if we talk about a city that spans much of a continent, is the idea that West Virginia is the old part of the city rational? Not really. So what if we made it 40? Gives me 5,600 or 500,026 square miles, which gives me 3,216,922 acres. Oh, it's 80% of. It's the size of Glacier Bay National Park. Glacier Bay in Alaska. Huh. I can't quite define where that. It's 90% of Connecticut. There we go. Yeah, honestly, that makes a lot of sense, because it takes, if we're going to go from Buteman, or north there, to here. It's a 2-hour drive, and that's not as a crow flies. I can see all of that being part of a major city. Okay, so that makes it 80 miles in diameter. It's still immense. 80-mile diameter circle. So if that's an 80-mile diameter circle, well, if you're curious, I have this, and I have this up right now. Alright, let's go down to a 9-mile radius circle, which gives me 250 square miles, which is still 162,000 acres. About the size of Molokai, which I assume is one of the Hawaiian Islands. Yeah, which is teeny. It's 110% the size of Chicago. Yeah. 80% the size of San Diego. For the airport, for one of the major airports, and a lot of that's an exclusion zone. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. If that's San Diego, I mean, it's basically just the Rancho Park. This is a very good website. The Measure of Things is an amazing website. I mean, you've seen what I was doing with it, but just the idea of it giving me 1 mile is you know, like, and what's nice is that you get tons of results. And since I was working with, like, massive geological features almost, it doesn't really matter. 1 mile is really kind of hard. Because you actually, like, almost need to see what the Daytona International Speedway is. Or the CN Tower. But it's like, you know, we're trying to grasp what 90,000 feet would look like. Ha! I almost got it right for Olympus Mons. 30% of the Panama Canal. So it's 25% of the English Channel. Like, that can give you a lot as a writer who has a really hard time grasping measurements. Usually on the smaller scales where I have, or like just making sure your measurements make sense. And it wasn't so much like, if I have a city, I keep calling it a continent spanning city, and then I look at this, and that's very, very hard to understand. Now that I live down in Texas, it's very hard to understand a city that scale. But the idea that an airport is the size of, especially a spaceport where ships are coming in and out, is going to be the size of San Diego on a scale that's, even if it's a small continent like that, or if it's, you know, most of Australia, something the size of Brisbane as an airport makes sense. And the old city being, you know, on the scale of one of these national parks, or like this whole area, can kind of make some sense. Not a ton of sense, but some sense. How many people can you fit in a high-density urban population? Tokyo has 15 million. And Tokyo... size of Tokyo. Tokyo is 845 square miles. Which is 500,000 acres. And Tokyo is hard to fathom. That's funny, Mount Odake is part of Tokyo. What about Beijing? Tokyo's 15 million. Beijing is 6,000. Beijing's much bigger. And it's 21 million people. Beijing is 4 million. So if we go with a 40-mile radii. Okay, so Beijing has 21 million people in it, and it's not an accreted mix of city stuff. Um, the heart of the city. Yeah, no, okay. Beijing is 6,000 square miles, occupies 6,400 or 490 square miles. So it's complete now. A lot of that doesn't look directly inhabited, but Beijing hasn't been. Well, it has been, but um, it's not as intensely occupied by this kind of civilization that Iridath would be. So that's the old city. Is smaller than Beijing actually, um, and then you've just got city all around it. Um, and then somewhere in there, you have a much smaller airport. You know, basically that green splotch is an airport. Um, one of many. Yeah, that works. What is Delhi? Delhi size. Delhi has a population of 18.9 million people in an area that is 573 square miles. That's immense. That is an intensely populated area. Given that Beijing has 3 million more people and is, in order of magnitude, the size. Straight lines. Straight lines. Spoke to its that was some intense world building. Uh, rigid walls. Favored curves and circles. Often creating structures of interconnected circles and ovoids and spiraling. Industrial foundry. Soften its It's a really cool idea. So if Trailian architecture favors or generally curved architecture, often creating spirals. And in the 9th age, Sudath is a city of spires. Irideth is a city of hundreds of mile-high tree or forests. And the DRU is essentially an MC Escher painting. That incorporates naturalistic elements and is very communal. Sudath is very much about... Sudath in 9th, 10th age, even 8th age, is all about rooms that have a purpose. I need to write that down. Sudath. Actually, it'd be Suashi. Suashian. All about rooms that have a purpose. Specific purpose. That doesn't matter. So death installs are all about rooms that have specific purposes. Shit, what did I just say? In Sudeath, everything... So in the DRU, it's just a mess, an MC Escher mess of magic and warps. You know, like, so you might walk into a room that connects to another room that seemingly was connected to another part. They violate the laws of physics ever so slightly. Hallways that are long are actually short, things like that. If the Imperium is all about incorporating nature, these ones are all about grace and elegance, so things flow together. So those are all about rooms that have specific purposes. Their styles focus on flowing order. About blending nature, function, and form. The DRU. So how do you spell MC Escher? There we go. I got it right. Slight violations of the laws of physics, or apparent violations. Emphasizes communion. Emphasizes communal spaces. It's not even individualistic. Emphasis. We don't need all of this to be bolded. Emphasizes. Grayson's lost her champions, but she has returned. Emphasizes. It's not individualistic. It's the right time, right place. How do you word that? It's all about rooms that have specific purposes. So the nature of the spaces it emphasizes, if the DRU is about communal spacing, the Sudeath, it should actually be Suashin. Suashin styles are all about specified spacing. Specific spacing. Whereas Irideth is about blending form and function. Emphasizes simplistic beauty blends individualistic spacing with communal on a whim. Kind of like because on one hand you have very communal, on the other hand you have very specific spacing, and kind of between you have not specific, not really communal either. It's kind of a melange of the two, or a mix of the two, but not as like a middle ground, just a different version of the style of a styling. And if Irashian orbitals are very sling bullety, or oblong, Sudathian orbitals or Suashian orbitals are half domes with like docking tubes and stuff coming off the bottom. And are like almost the things from Moon. And all of this is general themes. This does not... Like, we build our buildings in squares. These are all general themes, not the exclusive rules. We build our buildings primarily square, but that doesn't mean like the Googleplex or the Apple HQ isn't a circle, a donut, really. And we're in a very weird time where like it'd be really hard to define a 21st century architectural style. There's some really interesting stuff out there about like McMansions and stuff, where it's just stealing from all kinds of other architectural history, and it's a mess. But they've had some form of mass communication equivalent to like a telegram for most of their history, much of their modern history. Anything Fourth Age and back is kind of muddy, which is why I'm able to kind of describe generalized arcs of art style. Everything from the from the second and third ages is hundreds of thousands of years or tens of thousands of years in the past. And the history of it is a mess. I almost want to extend their timeline more, but 40,000 years is a long time. So my architectural style and everything is the Fourth Age, which was the first time everything had been unified, and there was a war between two major powers. The Fourth Age, really. Yeah, Fifth Age. And that's really when you can start like defining architectural styles and stuff that probably go farther. That on its own is 6, 5, 7.5, or 7.5, yeah. It's almost 10,000 years ago on its own. Especially because we're really in the 11th age, but 10th and 11th age architecture is functionally the same. In 9th age, the main shift is industrialization. This is also where the Civil War happens, and everybody starts splitting into their own entities. Cool. I need food really quick. No, I don't. Yeah, that follows. That all tracks. Good. All of that. Designers had abandoned textural sensibility. The fastest, most sensible structures they could. To soften former putting up baffles and faux arcs. Curved baffles and faux arcs. Retard to supplement. How many hundreds of millions of people can you compress? What's the population of Coruscant? Coruscant. It's over 1 trillion people in Coruscant. That doesn't feel right. People live in... continent. You could easily, in theory, put 7 billion people, or at least according to this, depending on density of population, you could get everybody, if it's as dense as New York, everybody lives in Texas. If it's as dense as Houston, 7 billion people live in much of the middle of the U.S. So if Ear to Death is dense because it's vertical, there's a couple billion people, maybe a couple dozen billion people in this one city. It's gonna be worth noting somewhere. Where would I put that? Ear to Death, yeah. Ear to Death, population estimates. Let's start with the old city. It is much less densely populated, but it is 40. Just 5,000. Square miles, roughly the size of Beijing. 21 million in it. Spaceport. Hey, oh, this goes in geography, doesn't it? Russian. Spaceport A occupies, what was it? It's a 250 square miles. So the size of San Diego. Mostly exclusion zone. Population density notes on 7 billion souls in one city. And these people, that's good to know. But it's not overtly hard to imagine how the city's supporting itself, given the nature of my tech and the fact that they have been an imperialist empire. And many of the other places in this empire are small. And much of the city is footprinted, going up. So it's multiple billions. We assume density. Population density of London is 15,000 inhabitants per square kilometer, or 39, or basically 4,000. Roughly, which we're not. And then we take, so if it's 4,000 people per square mile, and we assume the city as a whole, and here that's footprint is 1.8 million square miles. That's 4,000 times 1.8 million. That gives us a number that is copy that number. And then let's chunk that number into thirds. Thousands, hundreds, thousands, millions, billions. 7.2 million? That's not. Alright, what's the population density of New York? What's the population density of Houston? Oh, it's relatively close to the population density of London. Weird. Of New York City is 27,000 people per square mile. All right, let's do 27,000. it's going to be a trillion. It's going to be in the hundreds of billions, isn't it? $48,600,000,000 people. We estimate Iridath is, as a city, this that gives me Iridath's population is 48.6 billion people. What is the population density of London? Of metropolitan London. It's only 1,500. What is the population density of Houston? Houston has a denser population. Weird. That was a lot of rambling numbers, not a lot of writing. But it's answering questions I've had significant issues of. Iridath's footprint, if assumed at 1,000,000 square miles. Down that to my pictures. Oh wait, it brought it over. Never mind. See, orange map. And if we're working with something that spans much of the continental United States, an airport the size of San Diego totally makes sense. And an exclusion zone, I mean, an old city the size of Beijing or like Rhode Island, somewhere in the middle here, totally makes sense. And his argument is, like, in order to support people at a Chinese or Costa Rican, or in my case, American level of standard of living for 7.2 billion, you'd need 4.1 Earths. But that's fine for because my world's a sci-fi world. They've grown, plus a lot of the city is farming or other food supply. Because the city is so built the way it is. Sudath is probably a lot smaller. A lot more densely populated. Yeah, a lot more dense if it's all spires. It has a lot smaller footprint. I estimated the population of this nation at some point, and it was somewhere in the multiple trillions. And honestly, Iridath is probably bigger than that Houston map. I'm doing math because I'm the kind of person who's obsessive about world building. I don't know if you just got here or not, Kelvin, but I just figured out the total population of my capital city based on a density of a population density somewhere equivalent to New York, and on a footprint that occupies much of the continental United States. Just so that I understand how intense the city is. All because I had, in my writing, a circle that was 80 square mile radii, or had an 80-mile radius, and that was a huge. I was like, that's too big, and so I went back and I've been kind of justifying the scales of things. This is the way I write tends to be this crash course of like me writing, hitting something that doesn't make sense, and starting to do the research and the math to figure it out. All of that because I'm trying to figure out how to describe the ground level madness. What is it? I need to update my notes because they can't be. They're either Iraqian or Irashian. Irashi. I need to figure out. Yeah, it's a lot of that's for the reader, and a lot of it's like the reader's not going to see the average population density of Iridath, the capital city of the Imperium, but because I know what the average population density is, I can write the city in a way that's believable. And also that gives me numbers to work with, where the population of this city is 48 billion, which means and it's like the biggest city in the empire, or in the Imperium. But that means that like a population of somewhere in the range of 5 or 7 trillion is completely understandable if they control hundreds of worlds.
The problem is I don't do my world building in a discrete chunk. It comes as I write. I'm like, I need an answer to this.
The same. But we're shifting. Changing depending on the street, block, district. Australian buildings. Stop. Centric. Spirals. Interconnecting circles. Hardly. Butted. And all of this came because I was trying to figure out what the architecture of some of the client races was. Which means I need to do a little more work on the culture of the client races, which is a nightmare. Do we know nothing about the Vizian or the Carnarvon? This is a first draft. Honestly, it's not even a... Yeah, this is a first draft. It's barely even that. Oh yeah, this is a mess. I mean, I'm gonna open all of this just to kind of give people an idea of how nightmarishly anal I am about... Well, that's the short stories. So all of this is world building notes, and a lot of it is not nearly as full as I'd like it to be. I'm a pantser, not a outliner, so planning stage is not really right. I made myself sit down and make a rough outline of how I want the plot of this novel to go. But it's more like I'm going as I flow, and as I hit certain things, I have to add a new thing to the to-do list in the world building. Not only is creating cultures a crazy mess, I am an anthropology major, so I feel like when I try to create a culture, I can't do the thing of, oh, this is just, space Japan or space Russia. Although I have some elements of that because you can't otherwise. But I actually have to explore, like, on a culture by culture basis, if I get detailed in the culture, why it would have evolved that way. What are the external and internal pressures that would have shifted the culture? And I write non-human culture. My main characters are non-human. The culture is non-human. I do have a space Russia that is a human culture, and I don't really feel bad about that because there's a logical progression into a space Russia for humans, but like the Wolfman people probably don't have a logical progression for space Russia. So I'm trying very hard to avoid the Klingon-ish tropes, or the Star Trek tropes of like the Klingons are the warlike race. While also relying on racial stereotypes or species stereotypes to help inform like what their relevance is, because that's what stereotypes are valuable for. Complex structures. What would a culture of herbivores design as their permanent structures? Or a species of herbivores with high grav, humid low jungles of the equatorial regions. Who are very determined to maintain their own culture. If it's high grav, it's going to be low squat buildings. Yeah, but a culture of primarily carnivorous and especially like hunter-based people are going to be, the culture is going to be distinctly different from a herbivore, agrarian-focused society. And what worlds they come from is going to inform that as well. Like the Vezian, who I'm trying to think of, are a high grav, heavy metal
world, so their structures are going to be probably like big steel blocks, or something in that vein, because high grav means you're not going to build high, you're going to build squat and wide. And if you're a heavy metal world that's hot and moist, you're going to be building out of very specific materials. And you can make an argument, and I'm relying on other sci-fi in this place, that there's fundamental ways of thinking between herbivore and carnivorous and omnivorous species in just how brains are structured to interact with everything. Not that any of them are smarter or more peaceful, it's just that they're fundamentally different in how they interact with the world. I thought about underground, but they're not an underground species. So they probably built on the surface. Especially because they're adapted to humid, low jungles of the equatorial region. So I mean, we're adapted to the plains of Africa, so it doesn't directly inform anything. But we've also subsequently adapted to all the other regions. If it's heavy grav, you're not going to want to be high off the ground, but if it's a squat. Through it all. And green ways that connect sensibilities. Blending the foreign with Oh, that's a good call, actually. Yeah. I'm gonna steal that. I mean, basically it's Mos Eisley, but I'm gonna steal that as an idea. Only problem is because it's a jungle, I'm not sure... Or, you know, they didn't adapt to the jungle, or they adapted the jungle, but they're not jungle exclusive, so the heavy grav is more important there. So that if they're herbivores, they are not a herd species, though. Small group species. Unlike the Carnarvon, who are a pack species, the Hlynwas, who are a flock species, which makes them more communal. As a general rule, not as a specific rule. Transitioning. City. The building. That's true. So a big element of the culture that's subsumed the heavy grav culture is blending natural elements into everything. So I'm not even sure who would have come up with that, or if it would be something she would notice as different, interestingly. But it's a good idea. Dude. Further from the spaceport. Districts took on a unique. The districts lost the wild mix of settling for and a unique lost the wild mix of cultures, foreign and became more settled at Dralium. built around themes. But these themes range what are going to be some of the themes? So you've got a water feature district. Each district is going to try to be unique. Sapiens. Not area. Who's with her right now? It's Pitch, Kisun. It's not Kisun Hito. It's Imu Jamar and. Let's close all these notes that are open because they're getting in the way. Pitch and Fugidio. This needs to go somewhere. This needs to not be in these notes. Oh, what's his name? Shoot, minor characters. He's yeah. Wow, I forgot how to spell embarrassed. I did it again. Is the translated?
I need to read Tamora Pierce's.
They're my favorite books. Oh my god, how do I forget them? Nawat and Ali. Trickster's Choice, the Trickster series. Because Nawat's a crow. And a human, but also a crow, and I need to reread that, because she definitely did a lot of research about how at least crows interact. This is a much better way this is going. This is a much more natural flow to the story. Even if most of the time was just me describing the city, the story flows a little more naturally this way.
didn't realize Awesome Inventory did that.
12:30, so 1 o'clock. So... is that 3 o'clock? Cool. Cool. I'll work on this confrontation next week. We're gonna call it there. I need to get lunch and do some other stuff. Clean up the house. I don't know who's left, but whoever's left, thank you for coming by. Yeah. Thank you. This is just a really good way for me to keep my writing up. So I have a lot of fun. Let me know what you guys think of it, if I should play my music over the stream or not. Things like that. Bye.